I stood at the back of the church, clutching my bouquet so tightly that the stems bent beneath my fingers. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched Maya glide down the aisle in her stunning white gown. She looked radiant, exactly like a bride should look on her wedding day. But I felt sick. The organ music swelled around me, and I forced myself to smile as guests turned to watch the procession. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my best friend's life. Instead, I carried a secret that could shatter everything. My hands trembled as I followed the other bridesmaids toward the altar. The weight of what I knew pressed down on my chest like a stone. I had been Maya's closest friend since we were 7 years old. We had shared everything, our dreams, our fears, our first crushes. But now I held information that could destroy her. As I took my place beside the altar, I caught sight of the groom. He stood there looking confident and handsome in his black tuxedo, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing. I swallowed hard and tried to steady my breathing. The ceremony began with traditional vows and readings. I barely heard the words the pastor spoke. My mind raced through the events of the past 3 weeks, replaying every moment that had led me to this impossible position. It had started innocently enough. I had been helping Maya with last-minute wedding preparations, running errands, and picking up decorations. One afternoon, I stopped by her apartment to drop off some flowers for the reception. That was when I saw him, Maya's fiancé, standing in the parking lot with another woman. At first, I thought nothing of it. Perhaps she was a colleague or a friend. But then I saw them kiss. Not a friendly peck on the cheek, but a passionate, intimate kiss that lasted far too long. My stomach had dropped to my feet. I had frozen there, hidden behind my car, watching in disbelief as they embraced. When they finally pulled apart, I heard him tell her he loved her. Those 3 words echoed in my ears for days afterward. I had no idea what to do with this information. Should I tell Maya immediately and risk ruining her happiness? Should I confront him first? Should I investigate further to make sure I had not misunderstood what I saw? I spent sleepless nights wrestling with these questions. Part of me hoped I had imagined the whole thing, that stress and exhaustion had made me see something that was not really there. But I knew better. What I witnessed was real and undeniable. I decided to gather more evidence before saying anything. I could not destroy Maya's world based on one observation, no matter how damning it seemed. So I began watching him carefully, looking for other signs of infidelity. I felt like a detective in a crime drama, except this was my best friend's life hanging in the balance. Within a week, I had confirmation. I saw him meeting the same woman at a coffee shop downtown. They held hands across the table and spoke in hushed, intimate tones. I took photographs from a distance, my hands shaking with anger and sadness. The woman was beautiful, with long dark hair and elegant features. She looked young, probably in her mid-20s. I wondered who she was and how long this affair had been going on. Had it started before the engagement? Was Maya completely oblivious, or did she have suspicions she had ignored? I wanted to march over to their table and confront them both right there. I wanted to scream at him for betraying Maya, for throwing away something precious and rare. Maya loved him with her whole heart. She had waited years to find the right person, and she believed he was her soulmate. The wedding had been planned for months. Invitations had been sent, deposits paid, and family members had booked flights from across the country. Maya had poured her heart and soul into creating the perfect day. And now I had to decide whether to let that day happen or blow it all apart with the truth. Every fiber of my being wanted to protect her from this pain, but I knew that keeping silent would be its own kind of betrayal. I made my decision 5 days before the wedding. I would tell Maya everything I had discovered. She deserved to know the truth before she married this man. She deserved the chance to make an informed choice about her future. I invited her to lunch at our favorite restaurant, a small Italian place where we had celebrated countless milestones over the years. My stomach churned as we sat down at our usual table by the window. Maya was glowing with excitement, chattering about last-minute details and showing me pictures on her phone. I tried several times to interrupt, to find the right words to begin this devastating conversation. But each time I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. I looked at her happy face and could not bear to watch it crumble. Finally, over dessert, I forced myself to speak. My voice came out barely above a whisper as I said her name. She looked up from her tiramisu with a bright smile, completely unprepared for what was coming. Maya, I need to tell you something important, I began, my voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. It's about your wedding. About him. Her smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of concern. She reached across the table and took my hand. What's wrong? You look so serious. Is everything okay? I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled as I scrolled to the photographs I had taken. I saw something a few weeks ago, I said quietly. Something you need to know about before you get married. I showed her the first picture, her fiancé kissing the other woman in the parking lot. Maya stared at the screen for a long moment. Her face went completely blank, as if her brain could not process what her eyes were seeing. Then she looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It was not sadness or anger. It was something far more complex and troubling. I already know, she whispered. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I pulled my hand back, confused and shocked. You know? What do you mean you know? Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. She glanced around the restaurant to make sure no one was listening, then leaned forward. Her name is Olivia, she said in a low voice. She's his ex-girlfriend. They dated for 3 years before we met. I shook my head, trying to understand. If you know about her, then why are you still marrying him? Maya, he's cheating on you. I saw them together multiple times. This isn't just about an ex-girlfriend he stays friendly with. They're having an affair. Maya looked down at her hands, twisting her engagement ring around and around her finger. It's complicated, she said finally. There are things you don't understand. Things I can't explain right now. I felt anger rising in my chest. What's complicated about this? He's betraying you. He's not who you think he is. Maya's expression hardened, and I saw a flash of something defensive in her eyes. You don't know everything about our relationship, she said sharply. You don't know what we've been through or what agreements we have. I appreciate your concern, but this is my life and my decision. I sat back in my chair, stunned by her response. This was not the reaction I had expected. I had imagined tears, anger, heartbreak, not this cold, defensive wall she had suddenly erected between us. Maya, I'm your best friend, I said, trying to keep my voice gentle. I'm just trying to protect you. I don't want to see you get hurt. She stood up abruptly, throwing her napkin onto the table. Maybe you should worry about your own life instead of mine, she snapped. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting there alone with 2 half-eaten desserts and a table full of confusion. I had never seen her act this way before. Something was very wrong, but I could not figure out what. For the next 4 days, Maya refused to speak to me. She did not answer my calls or respond to my text messages. I felt horrible, torn between guilt for upsetting her and frustration that she was shooting the messenger. I had done what I thought was right, but somehow it had backfired completely. The other bridesmaids noticed the tension between us. They asked me what had happened, but I could not bring myself to explain. This was Maya's secret to share or keep, not mine. As the wedding day approached, I considered backing out entirely. Maybe it would be easier for everyone if I just did not show up. But then Maya called me the night before the ceremony. Her voice sounded small and tired. Please come tomorrow, she said. I need you there. I'm sorry for how I reacted. You were just trying to help, and I know that. But please, I'm begging you, don't say anything to anyone else. Just let tomorrow happen the way it's supposed to. I wanted to ask her so many questions. I wanted to understand why she was going through with this marriage when she knew her fiancé was unfaithful. But something in her voice stopped me. She sounded desperate and frightened, not at all like the confident, happy bride she had been just weeks earlier. Okay, I agreed reluctantly. I'll be there. But Maya, are you sure about this? It's not too late to change your mind. No one would blame you. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, slow and measured, as if she was trying to stay calm. I have to do this, she said finally. You'll understand everything soon. Just trust me, please. And promise me you won't say anything during the ceremony. No matter what you're feeling or thinking, promise me you'll stay quiet. I promised, though every instinct in my body screamed that this was wrong. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, playing different scenarios through my mind. Now here I was, standing at the altar as the pastor asked if anyone knew any reason why these two should not be married. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone in the church could hear it. This was the moment. This was my last chance to speak up, to object, to save Maya from making what I believed was a terrible mistake. The silence stretched out for what felt like an eternity. I opened my mouth slightly, feeling the words forming on my tongue. But then I caught Maya's eye. She was looking directly at me with an expression that was both pleading and determined. Her slight shake of the head was almost imperceptible, but I saw it clearly. I closed my mouth and looked down at my bouquet. The moment passed. The pastor smiled and continued with the ceremony. I had kept my promise, but I felt like I was betraying my best friend by staying silent. The vows were exchanged, rings were placed on fingers, and then they were pronounced husband and wife. Everyone clapped and cheered as they kissed. The reception was held at a beautiful venue overlooking the lake. White lights were strung across the outdoor terrace, and tables were decorated with elegant centerpieces of roses and candles. It should have been magical, but I felt miserable. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, smiling automatically and making small talk with relatives I barely knew. Maya's mother cornered me near the dessert table. She was a kind woman with Maya's same warm eyes. Thank you for being such a good friend to my daughter, she said, pulling me into a tight hug. I know these last few weeks of wedding planning have been stressful for her. Having you by her side has meant everything. I forced a smile and hugged her back, feeling like a fraud. If only she knew what I knew. If only any of them knew the truth about the man her daughter had just married. As the evening wore on, I watched the newlyweds dance and laugh with their guests. They looked happy, but I could see something forced about Maya's smile. Dinner was served, and I picked at my food without really tasting anything. The speeches began after the main course. Maya's father gave a touching tribute to his daughter, recalling memories from her childhood and welcoming his new son-in-law to the family. The best man told funny stories about the groom's college days. Everyone laughed at the appropriate moments. Then it was my turn. As maid of honor, I was expected to give a speech about Maya and her new husband. I had written something weeks ago, before I knew about Olivia, before everything became complicated. That speech sat in my clutch purse, but I knew I could not deliver those words now. They were full of praise for their relationship and predictions of their happy future together. How could I stand up and lie to all these people? My hands shook as someone handed me the microphone. The room fell quiet as everyone turned to look at me. Maya's eyes locked onto mine from across the room. I saw fear flash across her face. I cleared my throat and tried to steady my voice. I've known Maya since we were 7 years old, I began. We met on the first day of second grade when she shared her crayons with me during art class. From that moment, we became inseparable. The guests smiled warmly, settling in to hear a sentimental story about childhood friendship. But my mind was racing, trying to decide what to say next. I could still expose everything right now. I could tell them all about Olivia, about the affair, about how this marriage was built on deception. Maya has always been the kind of person who sees the best in others, I continued, my voice gaining strength. She believes in second chances and in the power of forgiveness. She has a huge heart and she loves deeply and completely. Maya was watching me intently, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her new husband sat beside her, looking relaxed and confident, completely unaware that I held the power to destroy him with just a few words. When Maya told me she had met the person she wanted to marry, I was so happy for her, I said. I wanted nothing more than to see her find the love she deserved. The word deserved came out sharper than I intended, and I saw a few people exchange puzzled glances. I took a breath and softened my tone. But relationships are not always simple or easy. They require trust and honesty, and communication. They require both people to be fully committed, even when times get hard. I paused, looking directly at the groom now. Marriage is a sacred promise. It means choosing your partner every single day, not just on your wedding day. It means being faithful in your heart and in your actions. The room had grown very quiet. Some guests were starting to look uncomfortable, sensing that this speech was taking an unusual turn. Maya's face had gone pale. I saw her hand reach out to grip her husband's arm. This was my moment of decision. I could say what I knew and watch this whole celebration explode. Or I could stay silent and let Maya live with her choice. I hope, I said slowly, choosing each word carefully, that as you begin this marriage, you both remember the promises you made today. I hope you treat each other with the respect and honesty that real love requires. I raised my glass, and everyone else did the same. To Maya and her husband, may your marriage be filled with truth and genuine happiness. The guests echoed my toast and drank. Polite applause followed as I handed back the microphone and sat down. My legs felt weak beneath me. Maya gave me a small, grateful nod from across the room. I had kept my promise. I had not exposed her secret. But I had made my point clear enough that anyone paying close attention would know something was wrong. The rest of the reception passed in a blur. More dancing, more drinking, more forced cheerfulness. I slipped away early, claiming I had a headache. No one seemed to notice or care. I drove home feeling empty and confused, wondering if I had done the right thing. 3 days after the wedding, Maya called me. "Can you come over?" she asked. "We need to talk. There are things I should have told you before." I arrived at her apartment that afternoon to find her sitting on the couch in sweatpants, looking exhausted despite her recent honeymoon glow. Her husband was not there. "He's at work," she explained, seeing me glance around. "I wanted to talk to you alone." We sat down, and Maya poured us both tea with shaking hands. "I owe you an explanation," she began. "I know you must think I'm crazy or stupid for marrying him when I knew about Olivia. But there's more to the story than you know." I waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. Maya took a deep breath and looked down at her hands. "About 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with a serious illness," she said quietly. "The doctors caught it early, but the treatment has been expensive. Very expensive. My insurance doesn't cover everything." I felt my heart sink. "Maya, why didn't you tell me? I could have helped." "I could have," she held up a hand to stop me. "Let me finish, please. This is hard enough to explain." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "His family is wealthy. They have connections to the best doctors and treatment centers. When I told him about my diagnosis, he offered to help. His parents agreed to pay for everything, all my medical bills, all the treatments I need." I started to understand, and the realization made me feel sick. "So you married him for his money? For his family's help?" Maya shook her head firmly. "No, it's not like that. I do love him. I really do. But when I found out about Olivia a month ago, I was devastated. I confronted him and we had a terrible fight. He admitted the affair had been going on for months." She paused, struggling to continue. "But then he made me an offer. He said if I went through with the wedding, he would make sure I got all the medical care I needed. His family would take care of everything." "That's blackmail," I said, my voice rising with anger. "Maya, that's manipulation. He's using your illness to control you." She nodded slowly. "I know. Believe me, I know exactly what this is." But I made a choice. My health has to come first. Without proper treatment, the doctors say my prognosis is not good. I can't afford to fight this disease on my own. Tears streamed down her face now. Do you know how humiliating this is? Do you know how it feels to basically sell yourself into a marriage because you're desperate to survive? I hate myself for it. I hate him for putting me in this position. But I'm more afraid of dying than I am of being in a bad marriage. I moved closer and wrapped my arms around her. She sobbed against my shoulder, finally letting out all the pain and fear she had been holding inside. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. I could have helped you find another way. We could have started a fundraiser or asked for help from the community. Maya pulled back and looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I was too ashamed. And honestly, I tried everything else first. I looked into medical loans, payment plans, charity programs, everything. Nothing came close to covering what I need. His family's help was my best option for survival. We sat in silence for a long moment. I felt torn between anger at her husband for exploiting her vulnerability and sadness for Maya's impossible situation. What about Olivia? I asked finally. Does she know about your arrangement? Maya shook her head. I don't think so. He told me he would end things with her after the wedding, but I don't believe him. I think he plans to continue seeing her while I focus on getting better. We basically agreed to have separate lives while maintaining the appearance of marriage. The cynicism in her voice broke my heart. This was not the romantic, optimistic Maya I had known for 20 years. This was someone who had been beaten down by circumstances beyond her control. I'm so sorry, I said. I'm sorry for judging why. Oh, you without knowing the full story. I'm sorry you're going through this alone. Maya managed a weak smile. You're the only person who knows the truth. His family thinks this is a love match. My parents think I found my soulmate. Everyone at the wedding thinks we're deliriously happy newlyweds. She looked at me intently. That's why I needed you to stay quiet during the ceremony. I knew what you must have been thinking, and I knew you were close to exposing everything. But if you had said something, the wedding would have been called off and I would have lost my only chance at proper treatment. I understood now why she had been so defensive at the restaurant, why she had begged me to stay silent, why my speech at the reception had frightened her so much. What happens now? I asked. How long do you plan to stay in this arrangement? Maya shrugged helplessly. As long as I need to, I suppose. At least until I'm healthy again. After that, who knows? Over the following weeks, I watched Maya begin her treatment. She went to appointments with specialists and started a medication regimen that made her tired and nauseous. Her husband accompanied her to some appointments but was noticeably absent for others. I suspected those were the times he was with Olivia. I wanted to confront him, to tell him exactly what I thought of his manipulation and cruelty. But Maya begged me not to. It will only make things worse, she insisted. I need to keep the peace until I'm better. So I bit my tongue and focused on being there for my friend in whatever way I could. I drove her to appointments when she felt too sick to drive herself. I brought her meals when she could not cook. I sat with her during the long, lonely evenings when her husband was supposedly working late. One day, about 6 weeks after the wedding, Maya received devastating news. Her latest scans showed the treatment was not working as well as hoped. The doctors recommended a more aggressive approach that would require an extended hospital stay. Maya called me from the hospital, her voice small and scared. They're saying I might need to be here for months. The new treatment is even more expensive than what I was already doing. I drove to the hospital immediately. When I arrived, I found Maya alone in her room. Her husband was nowhere to be seen. Where is he? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. He said he had an important meeting, Maya said flatly. He'll come by later. I sat down beside her bed and took her hand. We did not speak for a while. Sometimes friendship is just about being present, about sitting in the hard moments together. Finally, Maya broke the silence. I made a mistake, she whispered. I thought I could handle this arrangement, but I can't. I can't live this way, even if it means giving up the medical support. I deserve better than this, sick or not. I squeezed her hand gently. You do deserve better. You always have. She looked at me with determination I had not seen in months. I'm going to end the marriage. I'll figure something else out for the treatment. I helped Maya contact a lawyer the next day. It turned out that because the marriage was so new and the circumstances so questionable, annulment was possible. Maya's husband was furious when he found out. He tried to talk her out of it, even offering to end things with Olivia and be a better partner. But Maya had made up her mind. She realized that her dignity and self-respect were worth more than any amount of money or medical care. The divorce process was messy and painful. His family threatened to sue her for fraud, claiming she had married him under false pretenses. But Maya stood firm, and eventually they backed down, perhaps realizing how badly it would reflect on them if the truth came out. Meanwhile, I started a fundraising campaign online. I told Maya's story honestly. Not mentioning the marriage arrangement, but explaining her medical situation and financial struggles. The response was overwhelming. Friends, family members, co-workers, and even strangers donated what they could. Within 2 months, we had raised enough to cover a significant portion of her treatment costs. Maya completed her treatment successfully. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about her prognosis. She moved into a small apartment and started rebuilding her life as a single, healthy woman. We sat on her balcony one evening, 6 months after that disastrous wedding day, drinking lemonade and watching the sunset. I should have listened to you from the beginning, Maya said. You tried to warn me, and I pushed you away. I shook my head. You were dealing with an impossible situation. You made the choice you thought you had to make at the time. There's no shame in that. She smiled at me, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. Thank you for not giving that speech at my wedding. I know it must have been so hard to stay quiet. I laughed. Actually, I sort of gave my message anyway. Just in a way that only you would fully understand. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn pink and orange. Our friendship had survived lies, secrets, and impossible choices. And somehow, we had both come through it stronger and wiser than before.